speaker, Gabriel Rivière from Université de Nantes, who will speak about quantum ergodicity for magnetic Laplacians on the torus, two-dimensional torus.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thanks to the organizer for their invitation. So what I will discuss today is somehow related to what Semyon discussed yesterday on semi-classical measure, but it is on the opposite side of dynamical system, in the sense that it is for integrable dynamical system. And what I want to do today is to advertise some phenomenon that allow using magnetic fields to produce some equidistribution of the eigenfunction. Okay, so let me just describe the setup. So I'm on the two-dimensional torus. And I will look at a magnetic Schrödinger operator. So B will be a smooth function on T2, the magnetic field, and I will also allow B to be a smooth potential. So the electric potential, Okay, and now I will remind you what it means to consider a magnetic Laplacian, because there is some issue related to the fact that you can, so as you may know, for a magnetic Laplacian, you need to have a magnetic potential to define the operator. But if you are on the torus, and if you define the zero Fourier coefficient, d of x1, x2 of dx1, dx2, and if this is not zero, you will not be able to find a primitive for A. But we can start by defining the magnetic Laplacian on R2, and then I will explain how to put it on T2. Okay, so
just physically, you're thinking about magnetic field going perpendicular.
Yes, so it's a two-dimensional model. So you think of the magnetic field in the direction in the third direction. Okay, so one has the magnetic potential is usually, so it's not unique, but it's usually defined by saying that you take dx1 of A2 minus dx2 of A1. And let me give you, so with A, let me give you my convention. You can take minus x2 over 2 times d0 hat plus A1 periodic. So this one is a smooth function on T2. And then x1 0 hat plus the smooth periodic function. Again, you can see the issue if you want this, to define things on the torus. You have this function which is not a function of the torus, so you have to pay attention. So, but before paying attention, let me just write the definition of what is usually called the magnetic Laplacian.
No. Yes.
Okay, so let me be not disturbed. Okay, the magnetic Laplacian on R2 this is minus I dx1 minus A1 squared plus minus I dx2 minus A2 squared plus 0. Okay, so this is a well-defined operator on R2, and you wonder if you can make it an operator on the torus. Okay, of course not, because the problem is that delta V does not commute with the translation. With the map TMU is equal to U of x minus M with M in Z2. But this can be easily fixed just by twisting this translation and by considering function that has this twisted periodicity condition. Okay, so let me write this properly. So you set Tm of B. In fact, it will only depend on B0. This is the operator which to a function associate the same thing as before. You translate the function by m and you multiply by a phase, which is I B0 over 2. And I just have to check my convention. It is m wedge x with m in Z2. And what you can check is that first Tm B Tm prime B is equal to Tm prime B Tm B if and only if B0 hat is in 2 pi z, which is a kind of flux condition, but I will make this assumption during all my talk that the flux is a multiple of 2 pi. Okay, and if so, if this thing commutes, and then you can define the space C infinity of T2 of L. So this is because this is just a way to write some line bundle on the torus. Okay, you consider the space of smooth function on R2 such that for all m in Z2, Tm of B of U is equal to U. Okay, so this is the space of function on which I want my operator to act. Okay, and what I claim is that my operator, because this minus I dx1 minus a1 commutes with the operator TMB. You can check by a direct calculation. You can make your operator act on this space. Okay, so you have minus, so you have delta B plus B. It acts on C infinity T2 of n. It preserves this space. And you can define the spectral theory of this magnetic Laplacian as you would do for the standard Laplacian of the torus. Okay? And so some fact, there exists an orthonormal basis of eigenfunctions which are smooth, psi n larger than 1. There exists a sequence that goes as n tends to infinity, that goes to infinity, and such that the magnetic Laplacian of psi n applied to psi n is equal to lambda n psi n. Okay, so it's the same problem as we saw this week about the eigenfunction of some Laplace type operator. And you want to study the behavior of the eigenfunction in the large eigenvalue limit. This is the topic of the next theory. Okay, and I want to raise exactly the same question as in Semyon's talk. I want to discuss what happens to the so-called semi-classical measure in that context. And yes? What is it obvious that? It's not obvious, but you have to check.
What was the question?
The question was that is it obvious that it is self-adjoint? So I took everything real, and you can check that all the usual things work. Right.
So the L2 product is the standard. The L2 product.
The L2 product is the standard L2 product. Okay, so yes, I took the L2 product is U V bar, and if you look at if you have a function in this space, C infinity T2 of L and another in this space, this is a well-defined. Okay, so let me just state a theorem. Morin. So I will make an assumption on the magnetic field because the theorem I will state is wrong if there is no magnetic field. So I want to show the influence of the magnetic field. Okay, so, and what you have to think is that my assumption is saying more or less that the magnetic field is positive. Okay, but and I remind you that I will always make the assumption that B0 is in 2 pi z, and so if B is positive, this means that this integer is positive. Okay, so the assumption is the following. You suppose that for every point in T2 times S1, if you look at the average of the magnetic field starting from X and in the direction of theta, and you look at the limit as t tends to infinity, this is positive everywhere. So I will discuss this assumption just in a minute, but this is just the people used to say that this is kind of geometric control assumption on the magnetic field. Okay? And what I claim is that under this assumption, then, for any sequence of solution to my spectral problem, so delta V plus V of psi lambda, and I will switch to lambda square because I'm used to these two, with lambda going to infinity, you have that the eigenfunction, you take any function on the torus, then the integral over T2 of A of x psi lambda x squared dx converge as lambda tends to infinity to the integral over T2 of A of x dx. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that the eigenfunction equidistribute as soon as you're making an assumption on the positivity of the magnetic field. Okay, so this is my claim. Okay, so let me make some comments. Okay, so first comments about the assumption first. Let's start with the assumption. Okay, so if you are on the torus, B is a function on the torus, so you can write it in Fourier series. So you can write, this is the sum over k in Z2 of bk at exponential of 2I pi k dot x.
Can you just explain what's x plus t theta?
So you have a point on the torus, x, you have a direction theta, and
But
you
you wrote
flow.
Theta in s. Okay.
S1 is the circle.
Okay. So it's a direction.
It's the direction. Okay, so when you write the average over of this, so you have the sum over k in Z2 of bk at exponential 2I pi k dot x, and then you average from 0 to t exponential of 2I pi t k dot theta. Okay, and you can see, yes. You can see that this quantity, as t tends to infinity, goes to 0 if k dot theta is not 0. Okay, so this is a standard calculation. And so what you can say is that if for all k in Z2 minus 0, you have k dot theta which is not 0, meaning that theta is irrational, then the limit is just B0. Okay, so it's a zero Fourier coefficient. And otherwise, it means that there exists, if there exists k theta in Z2 such that k dot theta is equal to 0, then you will average along the geodesic in the direction of theta. And so I define lambda theta to be the vector space spanned by k theta that I intersect with Z2. And so in this case, the limit is equal to the sum over the lattice point in lambda theta of pk hat. Okay, so the limit is always well defined. This is a sum. Okay, and I'm just asking that this limit is positive. Okay, for instance, take b constant or b positive everywhere, and you will have my assumption is satisfied. Okay, of course, the theorem is wrong if b is equal to 0. So you just take sine of 2 pi x1 exponential of I k x2. Okay, you can check that the square is sine squared of 2 pi x1. I'm sorry. So I will switch the board. Yes.
Do you have functions that b that are not just positive but that satisfy your condition?
I would need to...
What was the question?
The question was, do you have a function which is not positive everywhere and which satisfies my condition? Okay, so I would have to imagine some function that is maybe, I don't have a feeling that this is equivalent, but
No.
I can have a function that's positive except a small ball.
what?
You know, a non-negative function that sort of vanishes on a small ball and positive otherwise.
Yes.
Sort of a silly
Positive on a cross.
No, but I think this is, let's think about B positive. Okay. Well, please. So this example is just the simplest example of what is the theorem of Jacobson. So Jacobson, he proved that in 94 that so in the case where B equal to 0, that any accumulation point of the sequence is a polynomial, in fact, a trigonometric polynomial. Okay, so you have a polynomial in X, a trigonometric polynomial in X. This is B. This was my example there, but it's a general fact. So this is on T2. Also, what you have is when V is not equal to 0, you have, and with V, even with low regularity, I don't remember, I think that it goes down just up to L2, but there are some results by Bourguin, Burke, and Zworsky, and result by Anantaraman, Massia in 2013 that describe the asymptotic regularity of the limit, and they show that the limit is of the form h of x dx with h which is in L1 of T2. Okay?
So what do you mean by the limit here?
But sorry, the limit. So let's think. I have this sequence of measure, Here? Here I'm showing that the limit is always the Lebesgue measure for any sequence. And because this is a sequence of probability measures, you can extract a subsequence that converges. So let's pick a limit of this sequence of probability measure. What are the properties of this limit? Here this theorem is saying that this is only the Lebesgue measure. And in the case B and B equal to 0.
So when you say the limit is a function, you mean the limit is
the
measure of integrating against this function?
Yes, any accumulation point of the sequence psi lambda squared dx.
To P of x dx.
No. Any accumulation point will be a probability measure, which is a density. It's not a Dirac mass, for instance.
Okay.
This is P of x dx.
And do we know that P of x is not 1?
What?
We know that P of x is not 1?
Yes, you see on my example there, this is not 1.
Okay.
No, but in Jacobson's case, there can be several.
We know that the polynomial should be non-trivial.
Yeah, there are non-trivial polynomial, and in Jacobson's case, I think he's proving that the polynomial has a Fourier coefficient on two concentric circles. I think that this is the... Okay. And last thing, related to the quantum ergodicity theorem that was mentioned yesterday, on the torus you can also formulate a version of the quantum ergodicity. It's not quantum ergodicity, but let's you have equidistribution of eigenfunction. So this is a result by Markloff and Rudnick in 2012. And they only stated it for B equals 0, V equal to 0, but if they allow me, I will say that their proof works for B non-zero and V non-zero. Okay, but they prove that take psi m to be an orthonormal basis of eigenfunctions. Then there exists a S of density 1. So I will just say after what it means, such that for all A, continuous function on T2, integral over T2 of A of x, psi n squared dx, is converge to the Lebesgue measure along this subsequence. Okay, and here by density 1, I mean it means that if you take the number of points between n and capital N that lie in S, and you divide by n, this goes as n tends to infinity to 1. So this was based on the argument of Schnirelmann for the quantum ergodicity theorem, and it exploits somehow the properties of the geodesic flow on the torus. But you do not have equidistribution in a phase space, for those who know the theorem on quantum ergodicity.
So this means that the Jacobson result is only true for a subsequence of measure 0 of density 0?
So the Jacobson result is you take an accumulation point, and so because of this result, this accumulation point in an orthonormal basis will be of density 0. Thank you. Okay, and we heard yesterday that this kind of problem, you have to lift them to the cotangent bundle. So this is what I will do to try to see what is going on there. And here you have an issue, is that you have to define a pseudo-differential operator on this space of functions, C infinity. So you want to define semi-classical quantization on the space L2 of T2. Okay, so meaning function on, so function on T2 with this period on R2 with this periodicity condition. Okay? And here it's not so easy to find out how to proceed. In fact, we were a little bit struggling with this issue with my collaborator, and I would like to use this conference to thank Bernard Helfer, who mentioned some very nice work by Montoyu and Kuiche in 2004, where they define a way to quantize observable in the presence of magnetic fields. Okay, so there is a nice way to quantize functions when you have a magnetic field, even on R2. And this is what I want to describe. So they did this procedure in R2, and then they generalize it for periodic settings also. But let me just give you a flavor of this quantization. So as usual, you consider function on T2 times R2, which are smooth. So there is no periodicity T2 times R2, sorry, such that for all alpha, the derivative of alpha in L infinity norm is less than is finite. Okay, and you want to define some operator. You take h to be positive, so think of h as lambda to the power -1. And you want to define op h, and I will put a b, that associate to a smooth function in S0 an operator acting on L2 of T2 with this periodicity condition. Okay, so I remind you that we have this function with this strange periodicity condition, so we have to find a way to associate to the smooth function on T2 times R2 an operator. And what are the properties of this quantization? Is the usual thing is that if you have a function that does not depend on psi, you have that op h of a applied to u is a times u. If you consider my operator h squared delta b, so the magnetic Laplacian, here this is op h of b of psi minus h and the periodic magnetic potential. Okay, this is an exact formula. Okay, you see here, if you remember, b was equal to d1 a2 minus d2 a1, and I had a periodic part and a non-periodic part. And the non-periodic part is hidden in the quantization here. Okay, that depends only on B0. And this changes a little bit the rule of the game, but not so much because you have a h in front of a magnetic field, so the magnetic potential. So this is small. Okay, but let me write. Usually, when you have a quantization like this, what you're looking for is a formula for the product. So let me write the formula for the product, and you see the difference. You have op h of b. So usually you have a times b. So this is still true here. Then you have h over 2i, and then you have a Poisson bracket of a and b. Okay, so as usual. And then you have a term which depends on the magnetic field, P0 h squared divided by 2i, and then you have, so let me, d psi 1 of a, d psi 2 of b, minus d psi 2 of a, d psi 1 of b, plus, etc. Okay? So it's exactly the same rule as usual, except that you have a subleading term b0 h squared. And if you know the arguments about quantum ergodicity, it seems that it will be harmless in the end. But I want to try to exploit this term. Okay, but this is the difference with the usual calculus. But otherwise, it's exactly the same thing.
That's the only term which arises at order h squared.
Yes, that's the only term that arises at order h squared. And then you have a h. So,
wait, so in this form,
yes,
so this is like a Poisson bracket in the h squared terms.
in the psi variable, if you want.
Psi variable.
Yes, if you want, yes.
So, but this you do because it's convenient or elegant.
It's
You
because
could
it's
use the other
convenient and
quantization.
elegant, and I guess that I do it exactly for the reason you say. That we could probably find some other quantization rule. There would be some other lower order term that goes around, and we will have to see how they cancel out. While with this quantization, this is the analog, if you want, of a Weil quantization. This is a very nice quantization adapted to the problem. But I think there is no reason, if you have some over quantization, you should be able to do the proof also. Okay, and so the theorem is the following. The real theorem that we prove is that we have also equidistribution in phase space. Okay? Theorem. So this is the generalization. So same assumption. So the magnetic field is positive. Then you have that for any A in S0 of T2 times R2, the limit as lambda tends to infinity of this Wigner distribution, so this magnetic Wigner distribution, if you want. A. So I did not this eigenfunction by psi lambda, I think. Psi lambda. This is the integral over T2 times S1 of A of x theta dx d theta. Okay, so you have equidistribution on the x variable, but also on the theta variable, okay, on the psi variable. So let me comment on this. Comments. You have at any accumulation point again. It's what Semyon said yesterday, but this remains true. Point of this Wigner distribution, which is to A associate up of lambda minus 1 B of A psi lambda. So this is a general fact that does not need anything except the usual rule of semi-classical calculus. Is a probability measure. So this is, I repeat the statement of Semyon yesterday, but in my case, on T2 times S1, and it is invariant by the geodesic flow. And the geodesic flow here is just you move along straight line. So you do x plus t theta, and in the theta variable you do not move. So this is the geodesic flow. There is no magnetic field at this stage. Okay? Because the magnetic field is a sum principal effect. Okay? Okay, again, this is what Semyon said yesterday, that this is wrong if B is equal to 0. So in the case where B equal V equal to 0, you take psi of x1, x2 to be exponential of 2i pi k x1. If you do the calculation, you find that the limit is integral over T2 of A of x, and you, because you are oscillating in the x1 direction, you will select the theta, which is on the circle, which is just the point 1, 0. Okay, so you really need again the magnetic field. Okay, and Semyon did yesterday some kind of review of quantum ergodicity. So as I have 20 minutes left, I will just say, please see Semyon's talk for information about quantum ergodicity. But as you heard yesterday, the quantum ergodicity is stating this theorem on negatively curved manifold along density 1 subsequence. Okay, and there were many progress on this subject over the last 20, 30 years. Okay, but I want to focus on my subject, but I would like to add two references maybe in a connection. So there is a paper by Zeldich in 92, and there is a kind of remark at the end of this paper. So he's looking at MG, hyperbolic surface. And with this hyperbolic surface, you look at the magnetic Laplacian of B, with B, which is strong. So B is of order lambda over square root of 2. Okay, so in all my talk, B is fixed, but in the Zeldich paper, he mentioned that if you look at the magnetic Laplacian, in this limit where the magnetic field tends to infinity with the eigenvalue, which is the strong magnetic field limit, then semi-classical measures are invariant by the Eurocycle flow. So in this case, when you are in this strong magnetic regime, you have not anymore the invariance by the geodesic flow, but you have invariance by an overflow, which is on the unit tangent bundle of M. And this invariance by the Eurocycle flow, what you know from the dynamics is that there is a unique invariant measure. Okay? So in this case, if you look at the limit where B and lambda go to infinity at the same rate, what Zeldich mentioned is that you have quantum unique ergodicity for free, if you want, because this is invariant by the Eurocycle flow. Okay, but and then there were some recent developments by Charles and Lefebvre, who give some quantitative rate of convergence. So they use the properties of the Eurocycle flow, the quantitative properties of the Eurocycle flow, plus they have a good enough Egorov theorem, so that they can have a refined version of this result by Zeldich. And also, in the case of quantum maps, in 2000, so quantum maps is what Semyon mentioned yesterday. You have maps on the two torus. You can quantize them, define operator, look at the limit. They explain how you can quantize some uniquely ergodic maps of the torus. And so, because these maps are uniquely ergodic, and so when you explain how to quantize them, you need to have a good enough Egorov theorem and so on. They prove that there is an all unique semi-classical measures, and they compute also a rate of convergence in this case. Okay, so this is for quantum maps. Okay. So for associated with symplectic uniquely ergodic maps. So you see, here, there is no unique ergodicity of a classical flow at first sight. And we want to look how B can help us to to force this unique ergodicity. Okay. So,
Excuse me,
yes?
So, at the opposite, can you allow B to become weaker and weaker in the result? Like a strong magnetic field limit.
Can I let
small,
B goes to infinity?
No, small.
No, 0 to 0, right?
Yeah, go to 0 with lambda.
I still have this condition that the integral of B should be 2 pi of some integer, so I'm forced to have something a little bit, it can be 0, but in the case 0, this is not true. Also, we saw it because of the example of the torus with B equals to 0 and B equal to 0, and in fact, recently some people.
Positivity.
What?
You need the positivity of the averages.
Yeah, we need the positivity of the averages of B, and we will not have it if. Yes.
So in your case, there is no notion of a magnetic flow.
So here there is no notion of a magnetic flow at first sight, but I will try to unveil it in my presentation. Okay. But don't worry, it will come because we have to. Okay, so what is the strategy of the proof? Is that so far we have not seen the magnetic field in my statement. So the strategy is to use what is called because I will discuss this a little bit, but let me anticipate. On the geodesic flow on the torus, you have two options. Either you are dense on the torus, either you are periodic. You have periodic orbits. You have two options, and the enemy somehow is the periodic orbits. Okay, so I will use what is called second microlocalization. So, procedure to unveil the influence of B along tori of periodic orbits. Because this is where I will have problem. Okay? So I have tori of periodic orbits for the geodesic flow on the torus, and I will try to do some blow-up along this tori of periodic orbits to see how the magnetic field enter in the game. Okay? So this second microlocalization procedure, it's an old thing in microlocal analysis, but I will try to. But at least in the setup I'm interested in, let me mention that for semi-classical measure, this kind of method, so people call this 2 microlocal semi-classical measure. Okay. This was introduced in the 90s by Fermagnan, Miller, and Nier in several papers in the 90s. And for the use of this method, at least to study semi-classical measure or eigenfunction of things, it was used like 15 years ago by several group of people. So let me mention, so Vasi, and Wunsch around 2010, where they studied the the 2 microlocal Lagrangian regularity of Quasimodes for integrable system. It was also used in paper by Anantaraman, Massia, and then for more general integrable system with Fermagnan and Leoto. And it also appeared in the work mentioned by Bourguin, Burke, and Zworsky, where they somehow treat the same problem of trying to look closer at what happens on periodic orbits. Okay, so this is when you study this kind of problem from the semi-classical point of view, this is not new to you rapidly see that this is the problem you have to deal with. So let me explain what it means to do this second microlocalization. Okay, so you have an invariant measure by the geodesic flow. Okay, so take mu to be an accumulation point of this Wigner distribution. Okay, we associate of lambda minus 1 A psi lambda psi lambda. So you know that this is invariant by the geodesic flow. So the geodesic flow phi t of x theta is x plus t theta theta. And we saw at the beginning, I did this calculation with the magnetic field, but you have to distinguish between irrational direction and rational direction. So two options, as before. Either theta is in omega, so the set of theta in S1 such that for all k in Z2 minus 0 k dot theta is not 0. So this is somehow the easy case, because in this direction you know that the geodesic flow will fill the torus and you will have the Lebesgue measure in this direction. So this, and the non-easy case is the case of periodic orbits. So meaning that there exists a k such that k dot theta is equal to 0. This is the case we saw at the beginning. So for instance, think of theta is equal to 1, 0. Okay? So you have a measure on the T2 times S1, and you have good direction and bad direction. The bad direction are the direction along periodic orbits. And I want to pay attention to this one. And so I take my measure, take the measure mu, and I split it as its restriction along the irrational direction. So here it's nice because this is dx times d mu theta, because you are in some irrational direction. And then you make the sum over lambda, which is a rank 1 primitive sublattice of Z2. And these are the periodic direction. So I'm just saying I restrict the measure to the periodic direction, and lambda is a rank 1, and I define lambda perp. Lambda perp is just the set of psi in R2 such that psi to k is equal to 0 for all k in lambda. Okay, so this is so I have a measure on the circle S1. So I have lambda perp here, and I'm restricting the measure on these 2 points where the geodesic flow is periodic. Okay. And here I have no information, no a priori information. The only thing I know for the measure mu T2 and lambda perp, it has only Fourier coefficient. This is the calculation I did at the beginning with the magnetic field. It has only Fourier coefficients in lambda. Okay, so mu of T2 times lambda perp. This is some, if you write in a Fourier series, this is the sum over k of mu k at exponential of 2 times k. So what you can do is that you can see this measure. this measure, new time lambda per, can be identified with a measure on a circle on T1 lambda, which is just lambda divided by lambda. So you have a measure on the circle, and you want to show that this measure on the circle is just the Lebesgue measure. This is the point of my statement. Of course, I'm not saying for a moment anything about theta, but I'm just worrying about x. What I claim is that this is the difficult part of the theorem, to show that this is dx. After, the d theta invariance is not so complicated. Okay, so for the sake of completeness, let's take lambda is equal to 1, 0. Okay? So I'm just having a measure with only the x1 variable, and I want to see if I can say something about this measure. And because this is a measure, if you remember what we did with semi-classical measure, we have a measure on the manifold, we lift it, and we try to study the invariance property. Now I have a measure on the circle, and I will lift it again. Okay? So this is what I will do, and this is what this second microlocalization procedure are about. So what I will do is that instead of taking symbols that are of x psi, I will add an extra variable, which is psi 1 over h to the 1 half. And this is just to zoom near lambda per. Okay, so I have psi 1 here, psi 2, and I'm zooming in a neighborhood of size h to the 1 half. And what I will prove is that you cannot have concentration in this neighborhood, and that everything has to escape from this neighborhood, and that everything that happens at infinity will be equidistributed. Okay? This is the game we have to play. And so it's good that I kept my formula, because we want to see B appear. And so just to conclude how it works, so I remind you how you prove it, recall how to prove invariance. So the proof you do usually is that you use that you have an eigenfunction. And you say, okay, I have an eigenfunction, I want to study what happens against an observable A, and I use the eigenvalue equation. So let me forget about V for the moment. Psi h, and because I have an eigenfunction, this is equal to 0. This is the argument, and what you say, okay, let's look at the formula. Here, I have a Poisson bracket, and so use, this is h over I of h d of psi dx a psi h t is equal to 0. And you divide by h, you let this goes to x go to 0, and you find that u of psi dxa is equal to 0. Okay? And if you have this, you're saying that the measure is invariant by the geodesic field, because this is the geodesic vector field. Okay? And so I will just repeat this argument, but with the extra variables here. Okay? I just repeat, and I have to pay attention, because now I will have psi 1 over h1 half. When I differentiate, it may be a source of problem. And let me show you what happens when you do that. You repeat the argument of h b of a of x. So I will just take something that depends on x1 for simplicity, because I only care about x1, psi 1 over h to the 1 half. And I repeat the exact same argument, h squared of delta b psi h. And let me pretend for a moment that the magnetic field is constant so that I do not have to worry about aperiodic, okay? Because I don't want to care about it. So what happens? You differentiate, you have the same thing, you have h over I, psi 1, because you have just x1 here, dx1 of A. Then you differentiate this, okay, we will see it in the second order term, but the enemy is this one, because when you differentiate, when you are making this zoom along the periodic orbits, okay, so when you zoom along these periodic orbits here, you introduce some bad symbol that when you differentiate them, as this loss is h to the 1/2. So you will see h to the 1/2 appearing here. So you will have h d0 at h to the 3/2 divided by I. And then if you look at my, if I do it on Scratch, I will. So what you have, yes, you differentiate. You have here, so you have it's only in the psi 1, so you have minus so psi 2 d, let's call the last variable eta of A. So eta is the last variable. Okay, and so now what we have, because we are close to psi 1 equal to 0, this is roughly equal to 1. And now we make everything on the same scale, and we have this. And this is eta. And so this new lifted measure, this new measure is invariant by the vector field so eta dx1 minus b0 at d eta. Okay, so this is the new vector field that you have. And now if you want to see what are the flow lines of this flow, you have that eta dot is equal to minus b0 eta, x1 dot is equal to eta. So you have that eta of t is equal to eta 0 plus t b0. So because b0 is non-zero, this escape at infinity, so you will not have concentration on the h1/2 neighborhood of this. And for x, you write that this is x1 of t is x1 of 0 plus t plus eta 0t plus t squared over 2 b0 at. And what you see is that the x1 variable will make a kind of spiral at infinity, which is this effect of the magnetic field. It will turn around and it will average the x1 component, and you will have that this measure that you have restricted to lambda perp, this does not depend on x1. And okay, there is some work to do, of course, but and this proof works. Here I use constant magnetic fields just for simplicity to have a nicer formula, but if you had a more complicated magnetic field, you will not see b0, but this function b infinity of x theta that I mentioned in my theorem. Okay? And so I think I'm over time, so thank you very much for your attention.
Do you expect that this method could work in other completely integrable surfaces? If you had, like, at the magnetic potential, then you would retrieve quantum unique for example, for the disk or for the sphere?
So for the sphere, we can say something, but it will not be as strong. Okay. For the disk, I have no idea, but maybe. And for some really completely integrable system, we have a student, currently a PhD student, who is working on this topic about trying to find some invariance properties and some equidistribution properties for more general integrable system.
If I can comment on that, it seems to me that in a surface of rotation, you might get enough spreading to know that you're delocalized over the projections to the base.
Yes. Yeah, if you want to make the same calculation, for instance, on the sphere, on the two sphere, which is with the
Sphere is pretty degenerate.
You know, it's a little bit degenerate, but you can say something that you have only concentration along certain periodic orbits that correspond to critical point of the average of B or something.
But the better generalization of this is probably the non-degenerate setting where you have enough then. Like you might get similar here.
So very interesting result. So there is, of course, some intuition here in that there is an analog phenomenon in the classical dynamics. So if we look at the magnetic field, say, constant, motion is along large circles, and the radius of the circles goes to infinity, and they become equidistributed in the unit tangent bundle. So it would be interesting to ask whether one can prove a sort of Egorov-style theorem for sequences of dynamical systems, because you're really looking from a semi-classical point of view as a sequence of dynamical systems, right? To get that. So I wanted to hear your comment about this. And then, of course, you can ask these questions also, say, for compact hyperbolic surfaces, because there, again, if your magnetic field is below, weaker than Zeldich's scaling, you're still on large circles. So,
Okay, so
maybe your
first,
theory would extend to even that case.
yes, okay, so first question was about using somehow a more classical path to the proof. So indeed, if you have a constant magnetic field, what you can do is to follow the proof of Schnirelmann, and in that case, you have an exact Egorov theorem so let me write for a magnetic dynamical system, so which is so when you are in a constant magnetic field, you have a vector field which is psi dx plus h v0 hat psi per d psi. Okay, so this is the dynamical system, as you say, that depends on h. And you can generalize this to a more. So this is the first order term in this semi-classical expansion that I have. And when you have a constant magnetic field, you have an exact Egorov theorem. And if you want to see something, you need to go 2 times of order 1 over h. So, as you mentioned, we should try to prove if we want to do something, we would like to consider for a more general B, a dynamical system like this, so that would depend on x. We will need to be able to write a proper Egorov theorem that would hold until time of order 1 over h, which is pretty long. And also, we would need to have a quantitative enough theorem on the dynamical side, because when you apply this result about, for instance, horocycle flow, you need to have a quantitative statement to say, I have applied Egorov theorem, I relate to the classical side, and then the classical side converge at some rate. And here you need a dynamical statement. So we will need not only the Egorov theorem, but also on the classical side. And for the other question, yes, indeed, we can let maybe B0 goes to infinity at the same time as h, but not too fast. And as we worked a little bit hard to build this quantization in the periodic setting, we would have to check if everything goes well when you make B depends on h. Just pay attention at least. But in principle, yes, if HB is not too big, I expect that this remains true. Because as you say, this, and in the end, but the motion of the circle you are mentioning here, this is what I'm trying to exploit here.
More questions?
Just a vague one, like to conclude on this. So just in terms of propagation, what does it mean? If you propagate as you go along the geodesic flow, you lose a lot in the direction of the circle.
Okay, so what happens here? So at first sight, you see the geodesic flow.
Yes.
Here. And this was a little bit like in one of the talk. So you start, and then you start to go in this circle. Yeah. So
you move, and some mass leaves, and you continue, and some mass keeps leaving.
I mean, you just write this equation.
It's a precession.
It's just the point.
Cyclotron,
You start from the
cyclotron,
point x0, psi 0, initial position, initial momentum. You go through this dynamical system. You will start to turn around the manifold. And in the case of the constant magnetic field, you will do a large circle of radius 1 over h, because this is a periodic flow in this case, but in general there is no reason that this is periodic. And this large circle tends to equidistribute. This is a classical fact that take a large circle on the torus, it equidistributes.
Okay, so let's thank Gabriel and